I'm Réal Hamilton Romeo. I'm a PR executive, a storyteller, and an adjunct professor. I'm a mom and a travel enthusiast, and I've struggled with fertility issues.
I'm Sinora a holistic nurse, health coach, entrepreneur, wife, and mom. And I've also struggled with fertility issues.
I'm Dr. Jillian Lucas-Baker. I'm a professor, a wife, and a mom, and I've struggled with fertility issues.
But before marriage, babies, and life, we were just three girls from the Bronx who met at a predominantly white private school in Westchester County in New York.
During our trip to Jamaica to celebrate Dr. Jill's 40th, we realized we had something else in common besides 30 years of friendship.
Fertility issues! And we decided that we needed a platform where we could amplify stories about Black families, maternal health, and our experiences with fertility and reproductive health.
We wanted to grow our tribe as well as provide support and possible solutions for Black women. That's what this podcast is all about.
Welcome to A Tribe Called Fertility.
Woo! Oh my God.
We made
Ladies, we made it. We out here.
We're here.
Yes.
Yes.
This is amazing. Okay, so for those listening, you might be wondering why we sound so cheery and hella crazy, but it's because this project has literally been 2 years in the making. Right, girls?
Yes, it has.
A little over 2 years. Yep.
Yeah.
A long time coming.
It's wild
July,
when you think
2 years
about it.
ago.
July
Yes, it is.
2 years ago. You are absolutely right. That is so crazy.
Yep. We were chilling on the beach. No corona.
Exactly. Way before Rona brought her ugly self into the stratosphere. We were outside on the beach, loving life, chilling, and having fun.
And that's when we came up with our idea for the
Oh,
podcast.
yeah, because then, of course, we started talking about, well, what have you been up to? What have you been up to? What have you been up to?
Absolutely. And so here we are. This call to action has presented itself, just chilling on the beach. And we just all started to talk about our birth experiences and where our families were today. And we realized that we all had fertility issues. Like, what's up with that? You know what I mean? Like, how could all of us have these issues in common? Made no sense,
And what's even crazier, it's like in pockets of places where we went or where we frequented or shows we watched, there was something about fertility or reproductive health or Black women. And it was just crazy to see like how all of these things kind of just converged. And it was like the perfect storm of elements that made it come together is kind of what I think.
Absolutely. Right. Even just like personal accounts, like we were just connected and like, oh man, I have a friend who passed away during childbirth, or, I have a friend who's going through IVF. And we realized that this is more than like a coincidence.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I mean, even when like I was saying like I had PCOS and you told me, Sinora, that you had it too. And then you started sharing like some of the steps that you took, and even like Dr. Lynch, the naturopathic doctor who you saw, I started to see him. It was just like it was just very organic, because up until that point, like I had never really openly talked about that issue with anybody. And then once you and I discussed, like I just felt more confident and comfortable to be able to share that with other people. And it was just refreshing and then once I started sharing, other people are like, oh, I've had symptoms like that, or I think I've had that, or I have that too, or I have this. What are you doing? And just hearing like other women, and it was all women of color. Like that was the other thing too. I'm like, yo, what's up with that?
Right.
Common thread, right,
but
Jill?
Black women, we don't want to talk about infertility issues. It's still very stigmatized. You feel embarrassed. And I think for me, it was the same kind of experience with me just telling people like, hey, we had a very hard time trying to have a baby. And
yes,
didn't think
absolutely.
it would be hard. And me being a person who just was checking boxes.
You mean you a little type A?
A little bit? I was type A. Oh, I was definitely type A. I'm not as type A as I used to be, but yeah. Yeah, but you finish college, check the box. Find a man, check the box. Married, check the box. Then, okay, I want to start a family. That should be easy. Check that box. And then it was like, oh no, you're not checking this box.
Yeah, like you like trying to make the check disappear.
The baby's not coming that easily. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so crazy because like we've all known each other since like 7th, 8th grade, and
7th grade.
you know what I mean? And for me, like I really held that in. I don't think I really was as forthcoming with my journey until I got with y'all in Jamaica. You know, I don't know what it was, but I carried like a little bit of shame. I carried a little shame.
You know,
I did.
You know, as Black people, we like don't tell your business
we don't
to nobody outside
it.
your house.
Don't want to talk about it.
Especially
what stays in this house.
Right.
What goes on in this house stays in this house.
And what I heard today, like I was listening to another podcast, and the guest speaker who was talking with the doctor, and she was like, you know, in slavery times, Black women were bred so that they could breed stronger, faster slaves, essentially. You know, so it was like, now we don't want people telling us when and when we can't have babies, and when we can't, we don't want to tell people, because then that makes you feel like less of a woman, and then people judge you. You know, they start like bringing up, well, if you didn't do such and such, or, you know, if maybe you did this, or, you know, like just lending their opinions when they have no idea about you and your specific case, or like what your specific situation is. So it's like, of course you don't want to tell anybody, and we're taught, don't tell nobody your business. Keep it to yourself. Like, what happens here is for here. And it's just,
that's right.
And I think because we've never freely discussed it. I mean, for me personally, even with PCOS, like I was diagnosed when I was 39. So that was 2 years ago. And once I started talking about my symptoms, because of course I don't have no man, so I tell my mama everything. And then she's like, oh, she goes, that sounds kind of familiar. Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, well, remember my period stopped when I was in my late 30s. And I was like, yeah, I remember you saying that. And she was like, well, what you're saying and how you're saying you're feeling sounds like me. I was like, well, why didn't you ever go get checked out? Why didn't you go get diagnosed? She was like, I was just happy that the period ended. And as I think about it, like I was gaining weight uncontrollably for the better part of 3 weeks, just before I started to go get tested and get diagnosed. Cause I was like, yo, what is happening? Like I'm exercising, I'm still gaining weight. I'm not even eating, I'm still gaining weight. And it was crazy. And I remember like being young and seeing my mother like gain weight a lot. And I was like, oh, why don't she just exercise? Like she complains about this. She's trying all of these fad diets, not knowing that's what she was struggling with. She had
nothing was working
issues and nothing was working. So to hear her now say that, and I'm like, yo, if this chick would have went and got herself properly checked out and diagnosed, she could have been able to tell me, hey, by the way, this is something that could be hereditary. Watch out.
Yes.
But because we don't talk about stuff, now I have
also,
to go
did they even know about PCOS? Because I feel like this is like a new phenomenon.
I
mean, maybe within like the 90s and 2000s.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
I think you're right.
Recent.
Yeah. I don't think they coined it as PCOS, but I think she could have, you know, gone to her gynecologist and found out that she had some kind of like hormonal disorder or something. Or find out like why she's going into menopause early. Because that was one of my earlier diagnoses. I was told that I had premature ovarian failure. And I was like, okay, what and what is that? So I'm like, she could have told me. And through my diagnosis, I talk to my daughter all the time. I'm like, listen, you're 14 now. I'm not going to tell you what people told me. Oh, when you get older, your fat cells are going to explode. I was like, no, but there's some kind of hormonal condition called PCOS that runs in the family. You might want to, you know, watch what you're eating, get a lot of exercise, because she's not very athletic. And I was extremely athletic. So I'm like, you have to watch that. Watch what you eat.
But you're changing that narrative and changing that pattern with your daughter.
Yep.
Yes.
Because I was like, I don't like that stigma of just like not saying anything. Because I'm like,
absolutely,
my mother did.
And I feel like we're changing, right?
Yes.
Like the more we learn, the more educated we are. You know, the more we go out and seek mental health services for ourselves and things of that nature. Like we are changing that narrative. You know, but it's something fairly new, you know, because like I remember going through the fertility issues, and like I did say something to my mom because that's my bestie.
Oh, you're
at
brave.
The same time,
you're brave.
You know, right? Exactly. But at the same time, you know, my mom was like the young mom. She was like the party mom.
Wait,
so
you know? All of our moms were what, 20, 21 when they had us?
When they had us.
They didn't have any fertility issues.
Right. No. None at all. So my mom was like, fertility.
They don't get it. They wouldn't have got it.
And that's,
she was like, you
that's
ain't
just
infertile,
yeah.
please. Like, and then I told my aunt, she was like, oh, you better pray and ask Jesus to wipe that away. And I'm like, Auntie, I pray. I go to church
Like,
6
we
days
are
a
praying.
week.
Right.
You
gotta
all I do is pray.
You got a different in with Jesus and Big G that I don't have, because apparently they ain't here with me. Can you talk to them then?
And then, you know, like, we're from the Bronx. So like I talked to a few of my friends, a few of my like parishioners, and they were like, go to the grotto, get some of the holy water. So I went to the grotto. I got some of the holy water. I bathed in the holy water, y'all.
Okay.
I took a bath. Had gallon bottles of the holy water.
Anything that will help.
And I took a bath in that holy water and nothing. But, you know, I tried everything, and I felt alone because no one was getting
You
it.
feel
you know?
so alone.
Yes.
Yeah, like even like my coworker told me about going to the grotto, and like I kind of felt in a way that she was like saying like I had to wash away sins or something. Like to get pregnant. I'm like, what? Like, I'm a good person. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
I had to wash away like this. It was just so. I felt so alone.
And here's why that sounds
I wouldn't wish
crazy.
that on anyone. You know what I'm saying?
I would not wish any infertility challenges even on my worst enemy.
Okay.
That's how challenging. And no, that's not even the right word.
Because
it's
it
like,
can't be that,
not for
you
nothing,
know?
but like cousin Keita was having like her 6th child, and like I'm like, can I just have one?
Like, can I have one?
Can I
like,
just one, baby?
Can I just one?
Have one?
I'm on the way to the shower. I'm like,
I'm not trying to be greedy, but like,
can I just have one? You
like
know
Chris
what I'm saying?
Rock and the one rib. Can I?
Yeah,
just,
and then when I get there, yeah, it's one. And then when I get there, they're gonna be like, "Wait, you pregnant? Where's the baby?" You know what I'm saying?
And
like,
that's the other thing.
I was so tired of all of that, and it's so crazy because like if I would have known that y'all were struggling too, I wouldn't have had to go through some of those, you know, some of those hard times by myself. Like it's so crazy. And just to find that out, and like in doing research, one of the polls that we discovered, I think it said something like 60% of like white women were able to talk with their girlfriends. About 63%.
So white women talk to their friends.
They talk to their friends about everything.
A lot more.
Black women
was like 37%.
Right. Yes.
I mean, but it's not even just like fertility. Like if you think about it, like a lot of my friends who happen to be white, they talk about everything. Like Black women, unless like y'all close, like we don't even talk to each other about like sex and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's still so like
there's so much
taboo, and it's like
taboo.
Like why? Like when I start talking about sex openly and freely, people are like, "Oh my gosh, like what's wrong with you? Like, oh, you need to calm down." I'm like, I'm down about talking about sex. Like, what's wrong with sex?
Right.
Sex.
Right. Well, because thank you.
So it's like if we can't even talk about how you get to the baby making stage, then of course you're not going to want to talk about anything else. It's just, I'm just hoping that with so much of a spotlight being on fertility, infertility, the different components and aspects, disorders, hormonal and non-hormonal, that now are making up some of these fertility concerns, that we can start to, and I say we as in Black women, start to feel more comfortable to talk about it more openly.
Black families.
Yeah.
Because it's a family issue. I know,
it sure
like
is.
when we were going through it, you know, we started out with me just going to the GYN and, you know, for my annual. And she's like, oh, you guys, you know, using any protection? Are you trying to have a baby? And I'm like, we're trying. And, you know, like, and she's like, oh, well, how long have you been trying? I was like, well, I mean, we've been having sex with no protection
for how long?
Yeah, a couple years now. She's like, couple years? So what would you say? You've been trying for more than a year and no pregnancy, no spontaneous pregnancy? And I was like, no. And I guess that's when it dawned on me that like, oh, wait a minute, you know, and she's like, well, that means you qualify as infertile. You're suffering from infertility. Right. And that just kind of hit in a different way. You know what I mean?
You were probably like
what? Yeah.
You know, and because we weren't really like trying. Like it wasn't like we were like taking temperature and I was tracking ovulation.
Oh, I did all that.
Right. No, I wasn't at that point yet.
Y'all were just having sex at this point. Yeah.
Right.
Unprotected sex.
Right. Yes. I didn't realize it was like a problem. But what she explained to me was that if you're trying for over a year, you're not using any contraceptive.
If you're under 35.
Exactly. Yes. So I was like,
you don't successfully get pregnant. That means you are infertile.
Right. So she's like, well, so let's just, do some diagnostic tests. And she did a sonogram and look at my ovaries and just make sure there was no blockage in my tubes and stuff like that.
Horrible. With
I
the
had
blue
nothing.
dye.
Yeah, well, before the hysterosalpingogram, it was just a sonogram. But that's when she saw that there were like 9 follicles in one ovary and like 10 follicles in the other. And she was like, well, you're kind of borderline PCOS, because I had gained weight and I had some other symptoms. And she was like, you're like borderline because you don't have 12 follicles in each ovary. So I was like, oh, she's like, so technically you're not really PCOS, but you may be. So I was like, what's PCOS? She's like, polycystic ovarian syndrome. So I'm like, oh, so she's saying how basically it mocks like insulin resistance.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
symptoms,
you're not diabetic.
Yeah.
But it's like the same symptoms.
Yeah.
So I had unexplained weight gain and things of that nature, and like a delayed menstrual, because I think one of my menstruals was like 38 days late. Another was like 45 days late.
Wow.
So she said, I was borderline because physically I didn't manifest with the follicles in the ovaries. So she sent me for some additional testing. She recommended I go see a fertility specialist. At that time, she said, maybe it's time to look at my husband. So I was like, okay. So now I had to break the news to Andrew. He's like,
that's hard.
What I gotta do? So he had to go have all that tested. The prostate exam.
Oh man.
Okay. He had to do that too. Yeah.
Because he was 35. So
yes, right.
And he had to test the quality of his sperm. And he had low motility when all the test results came back, but he was actually kind of like in low normal, but he was still very low. So they kind of want you like wherever your normal range is, they want you like in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he was far off from there. So they were like, okay, we're gonna have to do some things to work on that. But basically they just recommended like cleaning up his diet for like a couple of weeks, no drinking, no smoking, no nothing like that. And then he was able to kind of get the motility of his sperm back up. So we repeated the test and he was good. And I was like,
oh, that's great.
Okay, good. But what about
you
me?
like
what
so,
was going on here?
You like so it's me.
What about
you trying to tell me? Okay.
So now it's me.
Right.
So now it's me, and I'm like, this is some BS. Like what, And so the fertility specialist is like, I don't know. Like this doesn't make any sense. She's like, I'm gonna send you for a hysterosalpingogram. So that was the test, because I looked into it before we went, but I didn't like fully research to see if whether or not like I needed to take meds beforehand. No one told me
how painful. The pain. Yes.
We get there. And it was like, it's a CAT scan with dye, but you have to actually have a speculum inserted, just like you're going for your GYN checkup.
Oh
and my cervix was a little closed.
It's horrible.
So
Did they open it manually with their hands?
Yes. He was like, I can do this
right there.
Right. He was like, but I want to brace you. And I was like, we didn't get this far for nothing.
Yeah. My doctor actually did that to me.
I think that was one of the most painful procedures I've
ever had, right?
I was like,
after getting these kids out. Yes.
I was like, I don't like
screaming, y'all.
It's painful.
I screamed in there.
Painful. Yes.
I screamed.
I could literally feel it. Like,
yeah.
I screamed out.
Once you're like, all right, I'm doing this because I'm trying to have a baby. All right.
I didn't get this far. You know what I mean?
Listen.
I'm not giving up.
Right.
Y'all look good, because I'd have been like, you got to do what? To who? Yeah. No, I'm good, sir. Baby? No, we good, baby.
Let's go. Let's go with process.
You know what I mean? And so he's like, all right. So he felt bad too, because he knew. So I was like, all right, fine. So he got in and he's like, nothing's wrong. You're good. Like, you're clear. Your tubes are not blocked. Ovaries look good. And before this, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, we did IUI. And that was unsuccessful. We did that twice with Clomid. And that was unsuccessful. And so they were kind of attributing to like, you need to have this hysterosalpingogram to make sure there's no blockage and things of that nature. So now we did the hysterosalpingogram and I'm good. Like, there's nothing blocking. And so they're like,
you like, what? What is it then?
Right. So what's going on? And so the fertility specialist is like, you know what? You need IVF. So at that point, we're like, okay, disappointed. It hurt. Andrew had been through testing. I've been through testing. Like, we were like, this is...
You feel so beat up. You feel beat up physically. You feel beat up mentally, emotionally.
Sorry, you guys told me how much it costs. And I was like, say what now? Because I'd have been like, nah, I'm good. I don't need no baby.
And let's back it up a little bit, because IUI is not cheap either. Right. You know what I mean? Like, depending on if your insurance covers everything.
Gamal's insurance was really good at that time.
Thank the Lord.
Yes, right.
Thank the Lord.
Yes,
you know,
right.
that's expensive.
Yes, it's expensive. Yeah.
It's expensive.
It's like, how bad do you really want to be?
You know, and you know what that's like. And the Clomid is no joke either, because that makes you so hormonal.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I did the Clomid, and you know what? I had the worst migraines. I had the worst yeast infections. I had no control over my emotions. I was like snapping at people.
Nah, that's too many things.
And I'm still working, like while trying to get pregnant, and I'm in meetings and I'm going off on people. And
no, that's good. It sounds like I would have needed a leave of absence, because that's no, for real.
But most of us don't have that luxury. You're still working, you know, trying to still have a baby and going through all this.
Sidebar, you may want to ask for a couple of days if you have to do Clomid.
Oh, I know. I needed more than a couple of days.
Yo, that sounds like the original emotional roller coaster. Because like you talk about you at work snapping at people, I'd have been like, here come this girl again. Steer clear. Is she coming? Remember last week? No.
And then one of the we were on summer vacation with my nieces. I think we were at the shore, and this is while I'm on the Clomid. And one of my nieces asked me, she was like, Auntie Jill, are you a mom yet? And
oh my God, I would have bit that little girl.
She was 4.
Listen, she would have got it. Does it look like I'm a mom?
So with the Clomid, like you have no control.
Ask me that?
I had to go to another room. Like, the baby is 4. That's my niece. She's 11 now, but she didn't know.
Here's the thing, you know it's bad when a 4-year-old makes you cry.
Cried like a baby. Like,
you lucky you made it to another room, because I would have been right there crying, yelling at her. Does it look like I am a mom yet? Why would you say that to me?
Right.
I'm like,
listen,
I'm on this medicine trying to get pregnant. And then she asked me, Auntie Jill, are you a mom yet?
Listen, how much you want to go in that water, little girl?
Right.
Like, listen, see.
And that's the kind of stuff that happens. That's exactly the kind of things
really
that happen.
Yes.
When you're going through the process.
Everybody's having a baby.
Prepared. Everybody has kids. Everybody's having a baby.
It's a baby shower at the
baby shower every weekend.
You're like, what's in the water and can I get some? Because apparently my water over here doesn't have what yours has.
No, there's a baby shower every single weekend when you're trying to have a baby and you can't have a baby. So it's like,
hurts so bad.
Am I going to your baby shower? Or not? Like how
I
cool,
sucked it up.
How cool are we?
Where are you? 3 baby showers during that, and I was in the bathroom wiping tears.
Yep.
Y'all, you sound like me with weddings. I'm like, don't invite me to another wedding.
No, it's a trigger.
It really is. It really is. Because it's
is.
hard to know that you're trying so hard, and here come Abby with her 9-month bump. Here comes Susan with hers, and here come Keisha talking about, oh, this is my 5th one. Girl, bye.
Right.
I know I was going through all of that, like the Clomid, just everything, all the testing, getting ready for IVF, and one of my closest friends was pregnant, so she's having her baby shower. She's like, come on, we'll have a good time.
On the VIP list,
and it was beautiful. And it was. When I tell y'all, it was beautiful. It was on Riverside Drive, and it was like 2-3 floors. Nice. Like it was. When I tell y'all, it was crazy. Like she had the lobby with the step and repeat. It was off the chain, and I was just like, oh my God, I can't take no more. Yeah. But she knew. Okay. You know what I mean? And she was like, you okay? Like she came and she like checked in with me. She's like, you okay? She was like, I'm gonna call you after this.
And it's baby showers and it's kids' birthday parties.
It's everything.
It's all of that.
Everything.
But she checked in with me and she's like, I'm gonna call you after this. And she called me.
But that's a good friend.
You know what I mean? And she's like, listen, I was struggling too. Like, we were trying for a couple of years.
She told you that.
She told me. She opened up, and that was like the first friend that really like checked in with me. You know what I mean? And she's like, this is what I did. And she's like, I went and had hot yoga. Like she was like, you gotta relax because after a while, sex is like mechanical, and you like have a baby. You can't stand it because it's like
it's not pleasurable. It's not right. You're just trying to have this baby. I'm just trying to get pregnant.
Exactly. It takes all the love out of it, all the romance. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
And
listen,
she's like,
I will
y'all
say,
gotta relax.
I will say, like, for those of you who are listening, I know some of you are like, well, I don't want kids and I'm not trying to have babies. Well, welcome to where I'm at right now, because I have a 14-year-old and I knew when I was pregnant with her that I didn't want any more kids. And I will say, when you are not trying to get pregnant and you are having fertility issues, a lot of people, including your healthcare professionals, will just tell you, oh, go on birth control and here's a prescription for metformin. And I know some of you are like, what's the problem? Your fertility, your female reproductive health is like a microcosm of your overall health. So if you're not getting that checked, then, or if you're having issues and you're not focusing on rectifying them or trying to find ways to live through what you're going through or to manage your symptoms, that can be almost as bad. And I feel like that's the camp, at least for me, because, you know, again, I wasn't trying to have a baby, but that's the camp that I felt that I was put in. Like my doctor was like, you know, here's a prescription for metformin. This will help with the insulin resistance. And it did. But I was like, how long do I have to take this? And he was like, oh, you're going to be on this. And I was like, the hell I will. I was like, if you know that a sister don't like taking medication. Oh, he meant for like life or until like menopause started.
Well,
like
we gotta talk about this.
I was like, nah, I'm good. No. And then he was like, you know, how do you feel about birth control? And I was like, well, I feel like the birth control is what kicked this all into gear for me, because it wasn't until I stopped birth control that my body was just like, hey, hormones are going to do what they want to do when they want to do them. I was like, that's not cool. And then he was like, birth
control contains hormones.
Right.
So sometimes they will provide what you're missing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Supplement that. Right.
And here's the thing. I was like, for some women that might work. And then he said to me, and this is when I was like, all right, bro, like we need to have a come to Jesus moment. He was like, well, one thing that I know for sure, you know, will almost reverse your PCOS symptoms. He was like, is if you have a baby. And I was like, say what, sir? Doctor, what? And he was like, yeah, you know, if you have a baby, it'll almost certainly reset your hormones and you'll be like back to normal and you won't have any traces of PCOS. And I was like, I'm good, doc. I'm not trying to have any more kids. You would have thought I told him I was going to come in the middle of the night and kidnap his children and like
that's a lot to
harm
ask,
his wife.
To have another child.
I was like, no, sir. I was like, that's not in my future. I was like, I'm not planning on having any more children. And I damn sure ain't going to have a baby just to heal myself. And then who's going to take care of the baby? I was like, are you kidding me right now? I was like, no.
We're planners.
Like he really looked like he looked so hurt. Like I personally told him I was not having his baby.
Am I even in that place in my life?
Right.
Like, can we
I was like, mind you, this is 2 years ago. I was like, so my child is 12. Right. I was like, no. He was like, are you sure? I was like, no. And you know
like
what?
Me and Justin.
Right. I was like, it reminded me of like all those stories that I've seen movies about where you have parents have like one or two kids and one of the kids is suffering from some disease, usually cancer. And then they go and have another baby so they could get the stem cells to go help cure the other one. I was like, what I look like using a baby as a pawn? I was like, no. And then I said to him, and who's supposed to give me this baby? I was like, because remember, single. I was like, and your girl's not out here spreading her little flower around everybody.
You know, there's a lot of options. So
I mean, yes, but I wasn't looking into none of those either. Right. But I say that to say, like, you know, for any women who are listening, or if you're listening and you know a woman who's experiencing this, there are other options besides go have a baby or take birth control or here's a prescription for metformin. Like there's a lot more. Like it's like if you're not it's like if you're not having a baby, nobody cares about you. They're like, oh, okay. If you're not trying to have a baby, it doesn't matter.
And even when you're having a baby,
they don't always care either.
Because like, you know, I thank God that I had some decent experiences along the way. You know, when I was having all those fertility issues, I actually was seeing a fertility specialist that was a part of Montefiore in the Bronx. Yeah. And Hartsdale. Absolutely. You know, we're from the Bronx. So one of my colleagues actually recommended that. And I sought them out and she was so good. She was really young. At the time, I like in her 20s. I don't think she had any kids, but she really recognized what we were dealing with, the struggle and kind of like the disconnection a little bit that was starting to come between me and Andrew, you know, because it was a lot. Like he's getting tested, I'm getting tested. He had to go back and repeat tests. And it was a lot.
It's a strain
over
on your marriage.
Like it was going on like a year and a half. Yes, it is. All that taking the temperature before you can have sex. Oh, I need to have it right now.
I did that. I took ovulation tests and all that. I took that on one of our vacations.
No, you didn't.
And I didn't tell Gamal. He was like,
oh, okay, because I would have fought you.
You brought this stuff on our vacation? Yeah, because
you like, look, baby.
Like, listen, I haven't stopped.
This is the window.
You like just because we on vacation don't mean the ovulation stops.
We're in another country.
Right,
listen. We're supposed to stop.
We not on timeout.
This might help us.
This ain't red light, green light. Like, we ain't on timeout. Like, hello.
The window is this small.
Then I was like, what if they pull me over in the airport and go through my bag because I had the ovulation kit and the
I'd have been like, here you go.
All of that.
You gonna
I was like, they're gonna pull me over in the airport. Oh well.
That's your script though, right?
I didn't care.
I can't. Listen.
I'm trying to have a baby.
Right. Anybody got time for all your judgments?
You want to pull me over in the airport? Right. Pull me over.
Yes. What's interesting, Sinora, you just said like the window is this small. And I know you're talking about the window for ovulation, but when you think about it, the window for fertility is actually quite small too. I've heard some people say it's as small as 15 years. And that to me was a bit staggering. Like, you have 15 good years. But if you think about when girls are starting to menstruate now, like I got my period when I was 11, thankfully my daughter had hers when she was 12. And that's more like 12, 13, 14 is when girls used to get their periods. Right. Now they like 8, 9, 10. Mm-hmm. So it's like you're starting to get your period earlier. Right. And Black women are now the most educated group in
America.
Yes.
So when you think about that, because we're so educated, we're also a lot of type A people like Jill are waiting until your education is done. You find a man, you get married, wait a couple years, then you have a baby or quote unquote have a baby.
Right.
If your period's starting at 8, 9, 10, your eggs done started to dry up by the time you're ready to have this baby at 30. Like whatever age you are. 30, 35, 37, 40. So it's like, of course it becomes even more difficult. And I think, Jill, you were saying like married Black women have higher instances of
infertility than married white women. Yes. And I think a lot of people don't know that, but yes,
that's crazy.
We do.
And when you think of all the stereotypes, they're like, oh, Black women are out here having kids when they're teens, they're teen moms.
Right. We're having all these.
No, we're actually waiting.
You're like, where they at?
We're waiting. Right. Yeah. A lot of us are waiting.
We're actually planning. Like, I know where they at, but at the same time, like for me, for my direct friends, like we were waiting, trying to do this right, quote unquote.
Right. And or at the right time.
Yeah. To have all those issues. And it's just like, why, like, and I know I went through so many like existential crises, like, this guy trying to punish me and all kind of stuff. And, and it's just, it's very difficult, and then, my doctor, thank God she picked up on it. Like she picked up on like that guilt that I was feeling.
Doctor, then.
Yes. And she was like, you have got to let that go. Like there's nothing wrong with you. Like, so I actually got diagnosed with unexplained infertility. So that means basically like I had nothing physically wrong. So I didn't have anything blocking my tubes. I didn't have an excess of follicles.
None of that.
Yeah. And
you
then
were
Andrew was good.
Also.
He remedied his sperm. So it was like, it was unexplained infertility, which is like, I think that's one of the worst because it's not like you can address the issue.
So why is that
tell me like
happening easier?
What's causing this?
You know what I mean?
Happen?
And so now it's like, okay, we're getting ready for the IVF. And she told us, she was like, I think you guys need to wait. She's like, it was like June. And she's like, I think you need to wait until September at least. Can we just reconvene? She's like, you need to reconnect. You guys need to relax first of all and reconnect. She was like, because this is not good. Like, you got to remember why you want to have a baby in the first place.
And at that point, sex is your job. So you like, how many of us love our work.
It's a job at that point. Yes.
But why you want to have a baby in the first place. So that was the best advice. Like, we did relax, and like I started to do a little bit of different research instead of looking for like the best specialists and all that. Now at this point, now I'm looking forward to the IVF. So I'm like, well, what can I do to prepare my body for that? And I found that if you detox or cleanse, that the instance of the IVF being successful or taking the implantation actually increases. So I actually told one of my aunts, again, even though they were that receptive the first time.
You know how we are. We're gluttons for punishment.
Right. Right. And she was like, you know what? All right. You know, even though I don't think you're infertile, she was like, I'm going to refer you to
They don't even know what that means.
They don't know.
They don't know what that means.
Right. And she was like,
Thank
I'm
you,
going to
Dr.
refer
Auntie,
you.
because apparently when did you
Thank
get your
you.
MD?
Right.
Exactly. Auntie Charlotte. So I was like, okay, Auntie
Hey,
Charlotte,
Auntie
but can you
Charlotte.
just, you know, anybody? She was like, you know, absolutely. She told me that our family friend had just completed like a certificate in holistic health.
Mm-hmm.
And so she recommended that I go see a holistic practitioner. And so I was like, oh, okay. And, you know, when I went to go see him, it was the best. Like, as soon as I walked in the door, he was like, you have PCOS.
Yes, you got the squigglies.
Like,
That's what he was
yeah,
saying.
he
You
was
got
like,
the
you're
squigglies.
squiggly. He was like, and you need to just get yourself back together again. Have you ever detoxed? And I'm like, no, what's a detox? And so, you know, he recommended that I do like a 28-day cleanse where I basically went vegan for that time frame.
Listen,
raw
plant-based,
vegan mostly.
they keep saying it.
Right. And then take like supplements that clean out the colon and remove waste from colon. And supposed to remove like backed up like years of waste and help you with like removing birth control from your system and things of that nature, and just restore your hormone health and, you know, your overall health. So I did that. Felt great. I felt so good that I actually did like 32 days instead of 28. And by the end of the 32 days, I lost 38 pounds.
Wow.
So that unexplained weight gain
amazing.
Wow, that's
was
crazy.
gone.
Yeah.
And my period came on it came on the third week of the cleanse.
Wow.
So I knew I was starting to feel better, but I didn't know like I had remedy things, you know, but like I felt so good, lighter, emotionally even. And y'all, like maybe like a month later, I got pregnant.
That's
on my
awesome.
own.
I can't believe
that. Is
Not
awesome.
trying.
That is awesome.
Just a miracle.
And that's the thing. It's like, because you weren't trying. It's funny because I used to do detoxes a lot. Detoxes, cleanses, at least twice a year.
Wow.
And that was one of the ways that I realized something was wrong, because I did the detox. And every time I would do one, I would lose between 10 and 14 pounds. Like regardless of how much I weighed, I would always lose between 10 and 14 pounds. And I did this cleanse and I gained 15 pounds. And I was like, I'm not even eating food. It was literally like green smoothies all day, every day for 10 days. And I was like, I gained 15 pounds. I was like, something is absolutely wrong. I was working out with a trainer and I was gaining weight. And he was like, what are you doing? You're not doing what I'm telling you to do. And I was like, yo, bro, like, I'm telling you, like, I was like, something is wrong with me. He was like, no, like, you just need to work out harder. Even my endocrinologist at the time, she was like, you're just being lazy and you're lying to me about what you're eating. And I was like, yo, you knew. Like, the one thing I don't do is lie.
Well, why use the word lazy? Why use that word?
She had no bedside manner, at
least
not for people of color.
That doesn't sit well.
Not for nothing, but stereotype.
Yes,
stereotype,
and that's the thing.
Of course.
And she was
notions.
She was a white South African. So I'm like, not only are you here with your preconceived notions about people who look like me in this country, but you come from a country with a history that just finished about 2:00 yesterday. Their whole apartheid situation. I was like, so who are you to tell me? And she would tell me like stupid things like, don't eat breakfast, don't eat bananas, just eat salad and fish. Yo, she would tell me skip a meal. She was like, you can afford to skip a meal. And I was like,
skip a meal. That's not healthy.
It's not healthy.
I was like, what kind of doctor says this? But that, like, because I would cleanse regularly, that was one of the ways that I knew something was wrong. And I was like, nope, lady, I'm telling you something's wrong. And she was like, no. Because I was like, can we talk about weight loss medication? Can we try other like remedies? And she was like, she said, no, I'm not going to prescribe you anything. You just need to go and do the work. And I was like, and I left her office crying. That was the last time I went to see her. But cleansing and doing detoxes really do help in terms of cleaning out any toxins that are in your body and resetting certain functions.
Absolutely.
So
but let's go back to something you said. I mean, I think one main point is that you know your body. And us as women, we know our bodies. And there's often times when we are in situations when we're with healthcare providers and we tell them, I mean, we have instinct about our own bodies.
Oh, 100%.
Secondly, you're smart Black women. So we're not going into any situation without doing our own research.
Exactly.
We come to you like, oh, I already know A to Z.
Yeah. She would be like, stop going on WebMD. And I'm like, well, WebMD helping me more than you right now. Like, I don't, like, lady.
Right. So if we're telling you, I know my body, I know something's wrong, I know something's off, and then you all come back and counteract, well, no, you're not right.
My favorite thing was, all of your test results are normal. And I was like,
I don't care what the test says.
The test is wrong.
Right.
Or you're not testing for the right thing, or it's not picking up on the right thing.
Right.
No, it's not.
So
you're
ladies,
the problem.
Can I shed a little light?
Yeah.
Rock out. Go ahead.
Shed some light.
Go ahead, Nurse Sinora.
I hate to say it.
Just say it.
You know, we
gotta say
on
it.
The inside of the medical profession, when y'all get on the Google or Schmoogler and think that you can self-diagnose.
Right. Don't do that.
You will get discredited in a heartbeat.
Right.
Yes. And it's sad because it's not to say that you're not coming up with the right information. Yes, there's the patients that are off the wall, like nonsense. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's not to say that what you have Googled doesn't make sense. You know, I think that it intimidates the practitioner and it makes them have to deal with things that they didn't have to 10, 20 years ago. You know what I mean? Like they didn't have to deal with
different now, right?
Like medical terminology and, you know, definitions at the touch of a finger. So I think now it's like, instead of them embracing it, they try to discredit that. Whereas just look at it as a patient is trying to be vigilant. A patient is trying to help. You know what I mean? Like help themselves. Not that they're trying to discredit what you're saying. They're just trying to help themselves. You know what I mean? And sometimes, you know, it's not welcomed. You know what I mean? I've seen it far too many times. It's sad.
I will say I've seen older doctors get annoyed, whereas like I had a dermatologist who was a younger doctor. Yeah. And she was like, you look like the type of person who does research.
They're
and
not
I was
from
like,
the new collaborative
set it in ways.
I legit was like, I sure did. I was like, I looked up on the internet. I had this like patch on my skin, and she was like, and what did you find? I was like, it says it could be this, or this. I was like, well, I don't know, but that's why I'm here. And she was like, yeah, it's actually this and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, wow. But that was the first time. And I think she might have been like a couple years older than me. So to see that I had, and she was actually an Indian woman. So I was like, again, I tend to seek out providers of color because I feel like they understand where I'm coming from, my mentality, my culture. Even if we're not from the same culture, they have a cultural frame of reference. And it was just so shocking to me that this endocrinologist I went to came highly recommended and highly regarded in the field.
Not surprised.
And she was not a woman of color. And I was like, you know, Réal, maybe you need to just relax this a little bit. You ain't got to go seeking out black and brown people every time you need to go to the doctor. But after that, I was like, yes, you do.
It just revalidated how you felt initially.
Yeah. You know, and I feel like, having gone through infertility issues, I did kind of try to look for a black, you know, clinician, but I couldn't find
our fertility doctor was black, Dr. Samantha.
See, you were blessed.
And fertility, she was amazing.
You were blessed. Like I couldn't find too many that were REI, you know, which were like reproductive endocrinology and infertility. For me, it wasn't just readily available, but I did happen to have a good experience with the white fertility specialist. Now, when I had my child, now that was something else. You know, I was like a part of one of the top practices in Westchester, and it was a good experience in the beginning.
Westchester, New York, everybody.
Yeah, Westchester, New York. It was a good experience. At first, she sent me for all the tests during my geriatric pregnancy. I was 34 years old.
I can't even.
And she was like, you know, geriatric.
What?
That make it sound like you 62. Talking about, I'm gonna pop this baby out.
They said I was on the cusp because 35 is
right.
age.
If you're 35, everybody.
Right. And up.
You're pregnant.
You have a geriatric.
Yes. So I had one of those too.
Right. Okay.
I can't. Y'all are killing me.
And it was the worst. I'm like,
nobody wants that label. Come on now.
But especially after trying to have a baby
like, I'm
for like
dusty.
Right. Like I know my ovaries are dusty and barely hanging on, but you gotta call it geriatric? Like really?
Geriatric.
Yes, geriatric. Right.
So now I'm the grandma.
I bet you a man came up with that term.
You know a man did come up
You know
with
it.
You know it's a man.
Y'all know it now.
Y'all know it.
So, you know, I found actually I was seeing a nurse practitioner, y'all. But she didn't deliver. She wasn't a midwife.
Okay.
So she was a part of a practice, and I had to like transfer to an OB once they confirmed the pregnancy. And she was all right, but like
I like how
I
your
remember
voice
going,
went up an octave. She was all right.
She was okay. But like I want to say I was like 4 months pregnant. So we had gone now about 5-6 times to the doctor. And one time she goes, you know, to my husband, you don't have to come to every appointment. You know, he doesn't have to come to every appointment. And we just looked at her like, is she stupid? Like, why would you say that?
What?
You know what I'm saying? I don't even think we acknowledged it because it was like, why would you even say
that?
What
do you mean?
You know what?
He's gonna be here.
My husband doesn't
Would you
have
say
to
that
come.
to Chad and Karen?
Right.
Oh, no. Yeah,
right.
There we go.
Would you say that to Chad and Karen? That's what I want to know.
Réal said it. I didn't.
You know what I'm saying? And then I remember being like in my second trimester, and I'm a nurse. So, you know, of course, like I kind of know what to expect, and I'm looking things up before I go to the visit. And I'm like, okay, so she's going to measure the fundus today to make sure I have normal development going on, which is like the height of your basically your stomach, like from your navel to the top of your pubic symphysis, right? So
I remember
that's like right where, you know, your navel,
you know,
you get that dark line.
Yes,
you know,
they
that
measure
dark
that,
line. Yes. So they basically measure that line.
I remember that.
Just to make sure that your baby's growing.
Right.
You know,
I want somebody to tell
pace.
me why everybody gets that dark line regardless of what complexion you are one day. I just want to know.
I don't even know.
If anybody knows, you're going to have to let us know because I'm very curious.
I know it's
digress.
hereditary, stuff like that. I don't even know. But the dark line, so they're supposed to measure it. She would never touch my belly, y'all. Like I went for almost 2 months.
Did that make you feel
she didn't
like
measure the fundus?
You were an alien or like dirty or something?
Because I'm
just curious.
I'm like, why is she?
She should have been touching your. She should have been touching your belly like every single time.
Every time. So she was doing the Doppler just to like get the heartbeat and everything.
Okay, yeah, but that's standard.
That's standard. That was it. My visit was not even 5 minutes, y'all. It was like
playing with me.
And you're high risk. And you're a geriatric.
I'm geriatric.
So you know what? You should have been giving me extra care because of how old my ass is.
You're supposed to. You do.
You know what I'm saying? Right. I'm just thinking I'm gonna get a little something more. And then I remember saying to Andrew, like, this doesn't feel right. Like, why is she not measuring the fundus?
Your gut. Okay, so can we pause for a second?
Follow your instinct. It does not lie. I will say, I feel like listening
your gut
to
was
this,
on point.
That I was so blessed because I had a African OBGYN and he was amazing and he wanted to retire. And I was like, sir, I have not had my baby yet. You cannot go anywhere because I don't know where
my baby's going to be the last baby.
Like, I don't know. I was like, you're going to have to wait. And I think that was like 2 years before I actually got pregnant. And my pregnancy was a surprise. So it wasn't like I was trying to get pregnant. So I was like, all right, you can retire now. You're going to deliver this baby and then you can retire. But I feel so blessed to have had that because he was doing all kinds of stuff. And he was like, you know, in Ghana, we do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh, okay, well, you could do all of that right here. I was like, let me know. Like 100%.
I want that.
Yeah.
Like, I loved it.
I want that.
So imagine you went through all of this whole fertility struggle
for real
to have a child
for real,
and now this is the experience that you're getting, right? And it's supposed to be exciting, happy. You know, I know every time we go, we're not gonna like see the baby or right. But still, I knew what I was.
No, she should have been touching your stomach.
She should have been touching my belly. Like that's nuts to me. And you know, so. Needless to say, I wound up having an accident at like, I think it was 27 weeks. I was 28 weeks. I had a car accident while at work and I was rear-ended at a red light. And I was sent to the ER and had to stay in the hospital in order to have a 5-hour read on the tachometer. And so basically they wanted to make sure the baby wasn't in distress. I wasn't in distress. Stuff like that. And so I think I stayed about 10 hours because I couldn't get a successful 5-hour read because you have to have 5 straight hours. So I stayed like 10 hours, got out, and I called my doctor, of course, you know, like as soon as I got there, when I was discharged, and she was on call. She wasn't on call that weekend. It was another doctor in the practice, but they, you know, sent messages to her. And that Monday I called to follow up. I think that was like maybe like a Thursday evening. That Monday I called to follow up and she was like, and you're calling again about, and I'm like,
she said,
an accident.
I'm sorry, in a car accident,
like,
27 weeks pregnant?
You know what?
like,
can I just time out for a second? I understand that. This is a term I learned a couple years ago because I was like, yo, what is up with these doctors? Like, for real, for real. And someone said to me, doctors are diagnosticians. They go to school to learn how to diagnose and treat medical conditions. They're not your friends. They're not supposed to be here woo-wooing you. And I was like, well, the doctors that I know treat me very differently. I was like, so the experience that I'm seeing from some of these other doctors is very confusing to me. I was like, I'm not understanding. They were like, no, they're just supposed to diagnose. They're not supposed to chit chat and ask you about your family and what's going on. And I was like, well, that's what I was like, that's what all of my doctors do. They want to understand.
How do you treat the whole person without the whole picture?
Right. So sorry. Carry on.
Yeah.
So she was like, what you want again?
Your point is on point because so it's Monday after the car accident, and I was instructed to follow up with the office that Monday, make sure I didn't have any events over the weekend. And she didn't even remember I had an accident. So she's like, well, you don't need to come in today. Like, we'll see you on Friday or whatever. So I'm like, you sure? She's like, we'll call, right. She's like, just call if anything happens, anything strange. So I was like, oh, okay.
You know what? Thank goodness you and your baby were okay, because I've heard stories where women have been in situations like that and their baby has died in utero and they don't even know until they go back to the doctor. There's no heartbeat, nothing. It's like,
well, lo and behold, I was supposed to be made a high-risk pregnancy at that point.
Yeah, that's why I thought you were a high risk.
Yeah, because you already geriatric.
You were just geriatric. Okay.
I was already geriatric, right? And then I had a car accident, so I was supposed to be high risk at that point, and I wasn't. And I stayed with her for another couple of weeks, and my instinct was like, something is not right.
Something's right. Well,
you know,
you don't want to see me after I have a car
right?
accident.
Thank you. And my son was like in position from 20 weeks, so it was like a perfect
he was head
pregnancy.
Down?
He was head down in position that early.
Oh no!
And
ladies,
he was very active.
That's a no. Right.
He was very active. No, he was he was good. He was good, Jill. Like, he was good. Yeah. And then there was like little to no activity. And I kept saying, like, he's not moving.
when your children are in your utero, you know their behavior, you know their movements, you know their actions. Yes.
Like, he let me sleep at night. Mm-hmm. But from he woke up in the morning, he was doing backflips in there.
Yes, right.
And I'm like, no, something's not right. And I told her, like, my last visit to her, I'm like, something's not right. He's
wrong.
Not moving the way that he normally does. I'm kind of concerned. Well, let me just listen. You know what? Okay, I'll go get these ultrasound equipment. Like she didn't want
like you were inconveniencing her. Like, that's not the profession she chose.
Right. She's like, you got your last one coming up.
She didn't want to get,
and I'm like,
she didn't want to give you another ultrasound?
So that was like 30, 31 weeks. So I went for the last ultrasound, like 32 weeks, and everything was okay. But they were like, the baby's big now, so we can't see, everything. But, from what we can see, baby's not in distress. My fluid was okay. It was a little bit low, but it was okay. So I'm like, I wasn't okay with it. You know what I mean? And then I called again, the same friend who invited me to the baby shower. And I'm telling her the experience. And she was like, something doesn't seem right about that to me. Like, I know it's late, but do you want to get another doctor? And I was like, maybe I should. Because I haven't liked this the whole time.
This is 31.
This is 32 weeks. People. But I didn't like it, and I didn't feel safe with her. Like, going to the clutch, I did not feel safe because it just didn't feel right. You know what I mean? And I called my cousin and I was talking to her about it finally. And I said, did you love your doctors? Like, she was like, I loved it. She's telling me about her average visit. And she's like, they are so good. And I'm like, really? Like this was not my experience. Right. So she recommended I go see them. They were right up the street from me, which was awesome. And I went to the practice. There's 2 Black sisters in New Rochelle, New York. And yes, and they were off the chain. Like, Dr. Ankara, she actually treated me as high risk.
Did she touch your stomach?
Yes.
Okay.
And she treated me as high risk. As soon as I gave her the history,
okay.
she was like,
Yeah,
"You're high
because
risk."
right. I don't
Right.
get.
She was like,
Yes,
"So we're
you
gonna
should
send
have
you for
been
an
high
ultrasound."
risk.
Exactly.
Right.
She's like, "We're gonna see you every week from this point on,
Yes.
and we're gonna send you for another ultrasound." Like she had to advocate with the insurance that I get another ultrasound because she's, she explained to them the situation, and she's like, this is not right.
Yeah, right.
And thank God for them, because I would say at 39 weeks, I made it to 39 weeks. 39 weeks, I had no fluid. Yeah, it was awesome, but I had no full fluid.
Oh my gosh.
And the ultrasound that she sent me for,
Wait. You didn't have any fluid?
None. She was able to send me for an emergency ultrasound because the ultrasound in the office was not picking up anything. And I went to the hospital to have another ultrasound. And they were like, "Oh, okay. So you got to go home, get a bag and come back." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Is everything okay?" And they wouldn't even tell me because they knew I would know. Like they knew that I would know. And I was like, "Well, all right." So I went and got my bag and I came back and she was like, "You're not, we have to do this now. We're going to have to admit you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And she was like, "You know what? I kind of knew something was going on." Because like at 38 weeks, he was moving a little bit less, you know what I mean? And she felt concerned about it too. And she's like, sometimes that happens when they're constricted in there and there's not enough fluid, enough space. So she's like, we're just going to take him out. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, but I want to go natural. I had a whole birth plan and everything. And
she was like, let me tell you about your birth plan right now. We ain't got time for all of that.
She was excellent. She actually tried to go by my plan.
I love it.
That's why I wound up being in labor for 50 hours.
I love it. Like, okay. So you did this to yourself. Okay.
This plan. I did this to myself. It was no pain meds. So I was induced twice. 12-hour runs. Yes.
And I'm like, my eyes are literally popping out my head looking at you right now.
Nothing. I did not.
I didn't need to be.
I did not dilate.
She came out. That's wild. Twice.
I did not dilate. Nothing.
And you weren't having contractions? That Pitocin wasn't kicking your butt?
I was having contractions. Yes, I was, but I wasn't dilating. That was kicking my butt. It was ridiculous.
And they didn't manually stretch your cervix again?
They did. They tried twice and nothing. Nothing. Like I was so sick and tired of people trying.
I literally have the shakes right now listening to you. I'm like, nah, fam, like that's not real life. You're a strong woman.
Yeah, you don't know how strong you are until you're in the situation.
Listen,
you know
what really
I'm saying?
Don't, especially giving birth. Like you really have
it's scary. It's scary. It's not all fun and games. It's not like what you would think it is.
And that's why I don't understand how people just be popping these babies out like back to back. Because I'm like, my labor wasn't that arduous, but I'm like, no. I remember after I gave birth, I was like, can somebody tell me how I can go and speak to high school girls and boys about pregnancy and delivery to discourage them from doing this, because nobody should be doing this. Like, that's how I felt after I had my baby. Like no, like and to know that women still die in childbirth in 2020 with all of the medical and technological advancements that we have, like it terrifies me.
I can see how though, because if you're not paying attention to the warning signs, going in, thank God, Dr. Ankar was like on it. And I had explained the whole history to her, like everything that I felt coming from the other practitioner. Like she knew exactly how I felt, so we had established that bond, and she was looking out for me, and thank God, because I don't know if we would have caught that, like they maybe would have been like, let's keep going to 40 weeks, let that baby cook.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And she was like, nah, because we already know we have a history here. She had an accident, so thank God for that, because, even though she did try to stay to my birth plan, I wound up having to have a C-section because after 47 hours in labor, nothing. I wasn't dilating. I was still 1 centimeter dilated, nothing.
That's wild. You are a trooper.
Yes. And his heart rate had dropped from 155 to 127. So we knew at that point, he had to come out. And I remember that was the last time I walked, because I got up and I walked to the nurse's station. I was like, it's time. Page the doctor, because I'm not doing this with the on-call doc. I was like, page her, because it's going down, and get anesthesia, because it's time. Yeah. And it was so quick. Next thing you know, I'm on the table. My arms are strapped to my side, and he's coming, and when he was born, he actually had the cord wrapped around his neck, his arm, and his leg.
Man. Oh man.
So he was like
That's why he
he was being strangled. Yeah, he was literally being strangled, y'all. He came out like blue.
Talk about fighting to
and
get
he was
here.
quiet. And he was quiet when he came out. It was so
I'm getting chills listening to you because I would not have been able to handle that.
No, it was a lot. Like honestly, I was in and out of consciousness, and I remember like when they were like cord wrapped around the neck, because Andrew was taping it, and they were like cord around the neck, cord around the arm, cord around the leg. You know, they like get you know, like they're calling all the specialists in, and you know, and Andrew's like freaking out, but he's kind of holding it down for me. He's holding my hand,
he don't want to alarm you.
Yeah, and he's watching, and they're running in. It's about 10, 20 people in the room, and you know, next thing you know, I hear him crying, and then I was like, he's okay.
And
but
to
like,
know her son
died,
today,
y'all.
Listen, to know her son today, that boy is like, I am here, and you're gonna know me, and I love it. I love it. Well,
he survived some odds. Okay?
Yeah,
but we could have died. We could have died, y'all.
Yeah.
Like, if they
both
weren't
of you
on it, the both of us could have died. Yeah.
And like I said, in these days and times, that should not be happening. Everyone who's listening, who can hear our voices, hopefully you get to a little bit of taste of what it is that we are hoping to accomplish with this podcast. We just wanted to create a space where we can share conversations about Black families, reproductive health, and our experiences with the healthcare system and fertility. This is our inaugural episode. Yay! And we're so excited. We are a few days into National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we just want to send out just heartfelt emotions to anyone who is a survivor and to any of the souls we lost, including the mom of one of our very good friends and a dear family to Sinora, the Suttles family, just acknowledging their pain and loss that they've recently experienced. But we have lots of topics to talk about. As we shared earlier on, there's so many people talking about fertility, especially as it relates to Black women. And we will likely touch on a little bit of everything throughout the course of this podcast. And with that, we are going to say thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, we are going to have more episodes and more episodes and more episodes on all things related to Black women, our families, our maternal health, our reproductive health very, very soon. If you're out there and you are on Instagram, please follow A Tribe Called Fertility. We are literally at A Tribe Called Fertility.
Yes.
And for more information on each of us, your amazing podcast hosts, please visit atribecalledfertility.com.